This is Cult Film Face Off.
Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Cult Film Face Off. With me, as always, is Chet Roivas.
Hello.
And I am Nick Leonard. In this episode, we take a look at two titles from two legendary horror franchises. Both came out in 1986. Jason Lives, Friday the 13th Part 6 versus the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Tommy Jarvis, hell-bent on revenge, goes back to the cemetery, Jason Voorhees' last resting place, to make sure, once and for all, that Jason is dead, but inadvertently ends up raising him from the dead. Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives.
They thought the nightmare was dead and buried. They were wrong. Jason lives. Happy Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives. Rated R.
Starts Friday, August 1st at a theater near you.
Okay then, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Had you ever seen it before?
I watched all of the Friday the 13th films over the course of, I think it might have been one day, but it was probably 2 days, many years ago, when me and my friends were very fond of herbal refreshment, let's say. So my memory my memory is not great of them. But yes, I'd seen them all before many years ago. Yeah.
Okay. I've seen Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, half a dozen times, but I haven't seen it for about 20 years. It was the first Friday the 13th film I'd ever seen.
Oh.
I remember recording it on VHS, waking up the next morning, I must have only been like 15 or 16 years of age, and flipped it on and really enjoyed it as a kid. It made me go out and search out all the other films.
But was it on TV then?
Yeah.
It must have been cut to shit with none of the violence in it at all. There must have been no kills in it.
I don't, rewatching it, I don't remember there being that amount of kills. Whether they'd trimmed out kills, I don't know. I thought rewatching it this time that a lot of the kills, they don't linger on the kills.
No, they don't.
Which is a real shame, because you've got some really good kills in there. I mean, the kind of the back cracking of the sheriff, with he's folded like a deck chair. That's a brilliant kill, and it's not laboured on at all.
I mean, I think that's the highlight in terms of the kills. I mean, I thought this film was stunning by how poor the kills were. But sorry, carry on.
I think it's one of the strongest Friday the 13th films in the whole franchise. It's a polarising film with fans, I know that. Some people love it, some people can't stand it. What I enjoy about Friday the 13th Part 6 is it's extremely self-aware of the genre, and it parodies that. And it's something, I don't think there's a film that has parodied the genre it has been in until Scream came along 10 years later. The beginning, I think, the beginning is done so well. The beginning, it reminds me of it's like almost like a Boris Karloff. It's really gothic, and I really enjoyed that setup. And I also enjoyed the ridiculousness of that. The fact that they go to the graveyard, the lightning strikes twice. The fact that he gets the matches out, he's trying to light the matches to set Jason on fire with the gasoline, and then it starts raining. You know, it's one thing after the other. You know, so what I think is interesting about this one, it's actually got a story. There's actually a story in it. With previous Friday the 13th, there's not actually a narrative. You've actually got a narrative in this. You know, you've got Tommy Jarvis out of the mental institute. You've got him trying to convince the local law authority that he's not in fact doing these copycat killings. It's very TV movie-ish. I mean, extremely TV movie-ish. Yeah. You know, in the acting. I mean, it's funny. We've got another film where there's really bad performances from some of the lawmen, especially the deputy of the sheriff, who is especially bad. Wherever the red duck goes, you bang.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Sure.
Jason looked really good in this film. Zombie Jason is brilliant. Much better than I mean, when he was unmasked in other films, he looks terrible in Jason Goes to Manhattan. Mm-hmm. He's also, the mask comes off, I think, in Friday the 13th Part 4 or 5, and he just looks, it's really bad effect. It's more comedic, the look of his face, as compared to Jason Lives, where, you know, he's a zombie.
How much worse can he look in number 8, bearing in mind that it's just, I don't think the mask comes off. You say he looks worse in Jason Goes to Manhattan, but it's just a guy in a mask, right?
But the mask comes off.
Did the mask come off?
When he's in the sewer, the mask comes off. A load of if I'm pretty sure I remember correctly, yeah, definitely actually, because I remember laughing about when that scene actually happens. He's in the sewer, and then you get this kind of, the mask comes off, and he kind of to camera, and he just looks like he looks really latex and rubbery, and he looks.
But did the mask come off?
He looks like sorry.
Did the mask come off in Jason Lives?
It's off at the beginning. He puts the mask on at the beginning.
Oh, of course. Sorry, I was thinking later on maybe it came off. No, it didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So I really like the look of Jason in this movie. There's loads of kills in here. It's the second highest amount of kills in the franchise, 18 kills. The highest, Jason X topped that with 28. What's a shame about it is they're rushed. It's a real shame that really the best kill is when the girl's head is shoved into the RV and it comes out a la kind of Freddy coming out of the wall, that kind of effect, which I thought was done really nicely. The horror references I thought were good as well. I love the fact that the Karloff convenience store and they're going along Cunningham Road.
Of course, yeah.
This stuff hadn't been done in slasher films before.
The main police chief, the guy who looked very, very like John Carpenter. Big
time, he was Sheriff Garris.
Mick Garris, obviously. I don't know if he was a horror filmmaker at that point. Mick Garris.
No, that's the Sheriff Garris is the character. David Kagan is the actor.
Oh yeah, no, but Mick Garris is known for.
Oh right.
I can't remember what Mick Garris is. He directed Sleepwalkers. I remember that he was known as a horror film director for a time. I don't know whether it might be another reference. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just to lead on to that first scene, which I really revelled in the gothicness is the brilliant pre-title sequence with the James Bond parody is superb. Watching this as an adult, I certainly had rose-tinted glasses as a kid looking at it, because looking at it now as an adult, it's hokey, it's kind of, but there's no tension in it.
No,
there's no tension. No. There's there's never any tension in it at all. And what I think is a mistake is that they actually have children at the camp, and that children are never going to be killed on camera. Yeah. So that takes away a huge part of the tension of the film, which there hasn't got that. So it's a parody. It goofs on the genre, and that's what I liked about it. And the last thing I think that was done really well in it is the score. I mean, the score is really, really good. Harry Manfredini, who scored, I think, the majority of the Friday the 13th films, the score is very good in Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. And it's a very good... I've got to dig it out. I've got this kind of... It's an Italio disco remix of the score, which is really good. Oh, right. Yeah, the acting is kind of, it's very much rooted in TV acting. Yeah. You don't buy into... I mean, it's there's a lot of daftness in it. She falls in love with him just like, instantly. Yeah. She's falling in love as if literally gyrating on the bars of the prison cell within 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, that's interesting, because that's sexual assault. He says, come in, he grabs her and he like forces himself upon her. I was like, hang on, this is really... And then she was like, oh yeah, fuck it, I love this.
I won over. What is different though is that she was actually quite sexually voracious herself. I thought that was quite interesting that you don't really... They went away from having those normal tropes of having the dumb promiscuous girl.
Yeah, she was much more predatory than him, and she was like immediately like, oh yeah,
which is quite interesting how they flip those roles. It's very much a distant Jason film in the series, and it stands out. The griminess and the tension and the bloodletting is really kept down to a minimum.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Did you like this, going back to it?
I held it in much higher regard when I was a kid. I mean, I really enjoyed watching it as a kid, and as an adult, I kind of went. I don't know why I got so excited. I think I got so excited. Because I'd never seen a Friday the 13th film. Yeah. I was very young, and I certainly enjoyed it more as a kid than I did as an adult. I couldn't sit through. I wouldn't want to watch it again. Yeah. I'm not going to get anything more. It's pretty basic in terms of the problem is with these films. What makes you come back to slasher films is kills. And his inventive violence and something, whoa, and jumps. There's no jump. There's no jump.
There are loads of attempts at jumps. I mean, there's loads of attempts at jump scares. I mean, I got really, really knackered by the jump scares because it was just, it's things that have been spoofed so many times that they basically don't happen in films anymore. Where someone's looking at something, it's a just really shit jump scares in it. As I said, I watched all of these films in one go many years ago in a haze. And I remember this being the best one, but as I was watching it this morning, as I did, I was just like, there must have been better ones than this. This is a shit film. I mean, they were all. I mean, I think those Friday the 13th films are all terrible. If nostalgia wasn't a thing, we wouldn't have been able to get hold of this film to watch it because it wouldn't exist. It would have evaporated. Nobody would care enough about this film to watch it because I think it's shit. Just first of all, because there's no real recap, the film assumes, because they made these films so quickly, they just assume that you know what happened at the end of the last one. Is this supposed to be Corey Feldman grown up?
No, yeah, it's Tommy. Tommy, who was played by in number 4. Corey Feldman, number 4.
It was Corey Feldman. I just wanted to check.
Yeah, because you get his in the mental flashback, you get the voice of Corey Feldman.
That's what I thought.
So they basically they completely ignore A New Beginning ever happened. Because A New Beginning,
I see.
What happened with A New Beginning? Jason Voorhees wasn't in A New Beginning. It was from a memory. It was set. A guy had taken on the identity of Jason and started doing kills like him, but there was no Jason Voorhees.
Already, that sounds more interesting than this one.
So it bombed completely. So the studio, Paramount, mandated that when they rebooted the franchise, it had to have Jason Voorhees in it. Yeah. And that's why he features in it so prominently. There's no kind of setup. There's, let's get cracking and get Jason killing people, as opposed to Jason wandering around the woods, POV shots, sneaking up on campers. Yeah. I
thought it was weird that there was no flashbacks or anything. There was no look, this is where we are, these are who these people are. There was nothing. It was just assumed prior knowledge. So I suppose that says a lot.
Yeah, as a kid, it was quite confusing because having seen that as the first film, you're like, well, what's the context? Why is this guy so hell bent on digging up Jason Voorhees' grave and kind of, checking that he's still in his casket?
Yeah, right.
I mean, you don't sound like you got no enjoyment out of it.
I don't like these films at all, and like I said, I remember this being a good one, and I think I only remember it fondly because of the James Bond spoof at the beginning. I thought, that's a novel way to start, considering the other ones don't seem to have any humour in them whatsoever. No. And it's actually weird because one shot seems to have won me over to the other film we're going to talk about, but I'll talk about that in a minute. It's just amazingly poorly made. And the thing that I thought was amazing is that almost all of the dialogue is arbitrary. People talk just because it would be weird if they weren't saying anything to each other. Everything that's said, you're just like, no one needed to this dialogue did not need to happen. I mean, at one point there's a shot of a guy, a character who's slightly overweight, and he goes, I want a sandwich, or I want something to eat. And you're just like, it's just noise. No, I think you could watch this film. I'm sure you could watch this film with the sound off and just be.
But then you're going to be missing out on all the self-referential quotes. You're going to miss the guy who works in the drunk graveyard tender, turn around and going, it's weird what some people do for entertainment. Yeah. I mean, you're missing out on all the parody and all the self-knowing. That's what the best thing is. That is the best thing about this film, is the fact that it is the first slasher film to be playing it for laughs and to be sending up the genre that it's.
Do you reckon it was the first thing?
I don't know what other slasher film before Scream was so balls out with it, playing it for laughs and goofing it.
Yeah, I mean the thing. I mean, like I said, I think these are objectively terrible films. But the one thing that I can say is there was there's some quite witty editing. I mean, when the gravedigger delivers that line, and then it cuts to a bunch of children going, and you think, what's going on here? And it's like, they've cut to the next.
That happens a couple of times, and the gothicness. It was just like it's like a proper hark back to Hammer horror amicus aesthetic of some of it, which is new, which it freshened up that franchise, having those elements in Jason Lives.
I think the difficult thing with films, particularly in this franchise, is that they're made so quickly. I mean, the most clear evidence of that in this film was that. Did you clock how many shots there were of hamsters in a cage?
No.
There were
hamsters. In a cage?
Yeah, it keeps cutting back to footage of hamsters. I'm like, they're only putting this there because they made the film so quick. They're using it as a bridge to get from one scene to the next because they didn't have a way of doing it otherwise.
No.
I was like, why are we looking at hamsters again? I'm sure they do it like 3 or 4 times. And it's just like a scene will change and then it'll just be hamsters. You're like, okay, well, this is used as a bridge because they made the film so fast they couldn't actually make the scene. They needed to transition into another scene.
Well, they certainly churned them out in quick succession, 1 to 5.
Was there a bigger gap between the last
between
one?
6 and 7?
Well, no, 5 and 6.
I always find it very hard to remember what goes. I mean, this is testament to this film standing out in the franchise. Is that the others blend into one. This one has always stood out. Like I said, watching it, I was like, this can't have been the standout film.
there's got to the others have got to be more interesting than this. Do you remember the chase through the graveyard
with the sheriff?
Yeah. One of the most unthrilling chase scenes I've ever seen in my life, and it's. I mean, like so much of the film, it doesn't. I mean, I feel weird even trying to talk, giving any real care to what I'm saying, because the film I just thought was fucking shite. I always thought they were shite. Did you not? I mean, you said the kills were good. I mean, there was a triple beheading which basically happened off screen. There was a man who got bottles, and I was like, okay, all right.
Throat smash. There was a
someone
knife
getting stabbed in the head. Yeah.
I mean, no, there was loads of kills.
Yeah, but they were pretty dull. I mean, like, it was just basically a 3 or 4 minute setup, and then someone would get killed.
Yeah, there was a lot of kills in it, but what was a real pity with it is that they didn't linger on those kills. You know, you've not got a Tom Savini on board.
He was on board, wasn't he?
Tom Savini didn't do the effects for Jason.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure I saw Tom Savini's name in the credits.
Oh, okay. Because I just think that's quite interesting.
Hang on,
when we're talking about effects, the two films that we're talking about in the episode, you've got Tom Savini who works on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Oh, that's sorry. I watched them, so I think that's probably what I'm thinking of.
And in terms of contrasting those two, the gore and the effects are far better in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Watching Jason Lives as an adult, well, it was like put on a pair of comfortable shoes. What I didn't get is really why I was so into it as a kid, because I think it was just because I'd never seen a Friday the 13th film before. You know, Jason looks fucking cool. Zombie Jason looks fucking cool. I think that's what definitely appealed to it.
I will give it its due. I think that when it was overtly comedic, as it was on a couple of occasions, I did stifle a chuckle or two. I mean,
with the Friday the 13th film, it's one of those things where you always just compare it with other films in the series, and this is definitely one of the strongest in the series, if not the strongest in the series. But that's not saying much in terms of reflecting it in the rest of the slasher horror genre, because there are far better films out there than the Friday the 13th series.
No doubt.
You know, it didn't grab me like it did when I was a 14 or 15 year old and I was really telling everybody about it. It's a TV fucking movie horror film, you know.
Yeah,
it's not a great film, but I enjoyed it. I like revisiting it again. I'm not going to sit down and watch Jason Lives again.
Well, you'll never watch this again. If a local cinema put on the entire series over the series of
I would never sit down and watch the entire series of Friday the 13th. I'm just not that much of a fan.
But I don't know. You defend them so much, and I'm just like, just let them go. They're shit. Forget about them.
Well, I would defend Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives. But I'm not going to sit and defend Jason Goes to Manhattan, which is fucking terrible.
I can't believe that's worse than this.
Yeah, you check it out. It's awful. I mean, it's awful.
The more I think about it, when you on a previous episode, you talked about the one where there's a telekinetic.
That's the one after this, Part 7.
I bet that's better.
No, I mean Part 7. I don't think. No, it's not. It's not better because it hasn't got any of the references of the horror genre. It hasn't got any gothic. It's just a real run of the mill. I mean, this is the thing is I can't even remember. All I remember that's slightly interesting about someone is the final girl has powers that mean they have a bit of a final battle.
Right.
Which hasn't really happened before, because obviously what normally happens is that the other get, like in this film, he gets a metal chain put around his neck, or he gets he's been hung is quite popular. That's another thing as well, isn't it? That's another head nod to in a previous entry of the series, is that he's actually hung up in the barn. Is now he's hung down at Crystal Lake. I quite like the fact as well that when he's submerged, you've got the Camp Crystal sign that he's the irony. So there's a lot to like in this film. It is the best Friday the 13th in the entire series. Apart from the only film that's better than this is just Freddy vs Jason.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you didn't like it. I've got a lot of time for it. Let's move on to the next film.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to say briefly, when it was trying to be funny, where there's a scene where a guy's trying to prolong his orgasm while his girlfriend's leaping on top of it. Yeah, but at least it's overtly comedic. And then later on, when she's being killed in the bathroom and he's just turning the music, going, "I'm having such a great time." Terrible. I mean, it's terrible. At least it's funny. I was like, okay, at least it's not being played straight. At least they're trying to wring some laughs out of it.
The thing about this, the thing about Jason is, I did not laugh out loud at any. I didn't laugh at any time in Jason Lives. I kind of smiled and I was like, "That's a nice little touch. That's a nice little reference." Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I cracked up laughing.
Okay, but briefly. Did you not laugh at the bit where they synchronised the music so that every time Jason Voorhees was shot, he'd come back to life and the music would start up again and then he'd be shot again? And they just keep... I thought that was an amusing moment. But I mean, this is 95% just another Friday the 13th film and 5% some amusing stuff. So The jokes don't save it for me. I just thought it was.
I think it's not the jokes that's saving it. It's the parody of the genre. It's the self-knowingness. It's the the kids look at each other going, "What did you want to be when you grew up?" They know they're going to get offed. There's so many exchanges with the people he's going to kill.
This is a terrible film made by people who were just winging it. I mean, I think there's some nice moments in it, but Christ Almighty, I don't think if this honestly is the best one, I'm never watching a Jason film again, ever again. Not that I would have done anyway,
right.
but yeah.
But I don't think it's a shit film. I don't think it's a shit film. I think it's a flawed film that's trying very hard to break out the conventions of a series.
Right. Okay.
And you've got to give that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, but
and fucking hell, maybe I'm just. I've got such a. There's a part of me. There's the 15-year-old in me that fucking. That enjoyed it. That's why I still get enjoyment out of it, and I think that's what happens with films. You can get an attachment with them, don't you?
So
you forgive them for.
No, but that's exactly what I was saying. If nostalgia didn't exist,
well, film industry would be fucked.
There is that.
Okay. A radio show host is victimised by a cannibal family in Texas as a former marshal hunts them down for revenge. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
13 years ago, audiences across America were horrified by the savagery of a faceless killer. In the wake of this bizarre rampage, he vanished. Now, after more than a decade of silence, he has come out of hiding. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. The Buzz is back. Directed by Toby Hooper.
Right, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I know we have both seen this film. We both watched it together.
I was going to say, this is many, many years ago. We watched it together. Was that your first time watching it as well?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that very clearly.
This is the second time watching it.
Okay. Yeah. How long ago was that? That was the best part of 2 decades ago, wasn't it?
Easily.
Yikes.
Yeah, I remember being a really hot day.
Yeah.
And being inside watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yeah, I remember that.
How did you feel about watching it then and watching it now?
Okay, I will say this. I realise now what I probably didn't accept at the time was that I remember you were way less positive about it than I was, and I was like, I really enjoyed that.
I couldn't stand it.
Yeah, but I remember that was partially because I was so smitten with the final shot in the film. I love the final shot in this film, and I loved it so much as a kid. I loved it so much that I was like, I like the film exclusively on that basis. I couldn't really remember a whole lot going in. I couldn't remember a whole lot apart from that. But you didn't like it back then.
No, I really disliked it, and I know why I disliked it, because I was still on a complete high of really loving the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the best horror films of all time. It's one of my favourite films of all time, and I remember sitting in there, pretty po-face, going, what the fuck is this travesty that's been set out in front of me? Watching it 2 decades later, I enjoyed it way more.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
There are plenty of things wrong with it, but there's quite a lot of good in it as well. There's some fantastic gore in this film. Tom Savini does a really good job, especially on is it CJ or no? Sorry, LG, the radio, the
assistant,
the assistant at the radio station. When Stretch comes across him in the family's den, he has got some gnarly makeup on his face and his torso. Yeah. Dennis Hopper is probably like the weakest thing about this. Dennis Hopper's got a really odd tone in this. He's really, really overacting with not a lot of, got no dialogue to go with when he's kind of chopped. That didn't work for me when he's at the end. He's underneath the family's the catacombs of the amusement park. There is a scene which is brilliant with Dennis Hopper, which is where he's got the chainsaw and he's honing his chainsaw skills with a huge with a felled tree, with an old guy really getting off on him doing that, which is where the great line of dialogue which we quoted for years after watching this film.
Oh, my aching banana.
Yeah.
I I mean, what does that even mean?
Is it a sexual phallic reference to him really getting turned on?
I don't know.
He's getting turned on by Dennis Hopper, so they're going, oh, my aching banana, I can feel you. Is he basically getting a massive trouser twitch from watching Dennis Hopper go at it with that chainsaw?
That scene is very, very amusing, though, although it's just completely fucking bizarre. I mean,
but I'd like more of that.
Yeah, I know.
More genuinely bizarre stuff would have been great, because when it's kind of really, I mean, Bill Moseley in this film is not, you
didn't like him? I thought he was terrific. Really?
No, Chop Top. No, I didn't. No, every time Chop Top was on the screen, I was just like, yeah, he's just. It was. I kind of.
I thought it was fucking. I thought he was terrific, and so when he first appeared on screen, I thought, is that the same actor who played the hitchhiker in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre? No, it's not. Of course it is. But I didn't. He's so good at replicating that, being a part of that family. At first, I thought, is that the same actor? And I was like, no, it isn't. It was originally supposed to be that character, but they changed it to his brother-in-law. Isn't
that character the corpse that they bring around the whole time?
Yes, I thought that was really interesting.
That's the hitchhiker, right?
Yeah. They're using him as like a dummy. Yeah.
I mean, Drayton Sawyer is brilliant in this film.
Is that like the dad?
He's the only cast member from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
He's the perfect mix of inbred, twisted, psychopathic. You don't know where he's coming from. His performance is amazing. I love the fact when Dennis Hopper comes in, he thinks it's somebody from a rival food company.
That's right.
You goddamn Mexicans! I mean, I was just like, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. That performance and his kind of, and I think you compare that to Bill Moseley, who amps everything up and is completely over the top. And
I don't think you can compare Jim Seidel, the actor's name who plays the dad. His performance in the first film and his performance in this film they're just two of my favourite performances in anything. I think he's so unbelievably brilliant as that character that he elevates the first film as a horror film and he elevates this as a comedy. Because you can't, I don't know how you describe that performance. He's permanently shouting and he's always doing this kind of vaudeville gesturing with his body, and like when he keeps kicking his
when he keeps kicking Bubba, is brilliant. But then when he's in the general public and everything, he's kind of got there's a charm about his character as well, which I think is really good as well. That he's not just a one-note performance, whereas Bill Moseley is Chop Top. He's a one-note character.
I suppose
over the top.
I suppose he is, but I mean, he's not dissimilar to the role that the hitchhiker played in the first film. The way he's got that coat hanger and he keeps picking at his.
I think the hitchhiker really made my skin crawl, and Bill Moseley never made. My skin crawl.
No, that's true. I suppose but that's completely different. It's an ultra-realistic horror film versus this fucking just amped up Roadhouse cartoon. I mean, I don't even know how you describe this. You can the thing that I didn't remember, especially having watched that documentary about the Cannon films that came out fairly recently. Cannon films, you can spot one a mile away. Those two, Golan and Globus, they always make the most absurd cost-cutting measures on things that you can't. So, for example, even a film as quickly made as Jason Lives has a really good orchestral soundtrack. This
soundtrack's terrible.
Has got a fucking like a absurdly cheap synthesizer score.
It reminded me of the Bad Taste score. There was the last quarter of just the kind of just isolated keys.
Like
a monkey, like an organ grinding monkey on a synthesizer.
Yeah, right. It was. I mean, it's a terrible score, and it makes it feel so much. I mean, it sounded to me like the music they would play in like a ghost train, like a theme park for like children. And what's also funny with regards to the music is they clearly Jason Lives has a tie-in soundtrack with Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper made some music.
He did a couple of tracks specifically for the film. Yeah. Man Behind the Mask.
Is that what I was like? Oh, so it's literally for the film.
Yeah, there's a couple of tracks in there which is specifically for Jason Lives.
Okay, yeah.
And Mancini, they had a proper film composer working on Jason Lives.
So yeah, compare that to this because they've got that terrible synthesizer score, and also the main character Stretch has a radio show, and she always talks. Oh, I don't want to keep playing music for headbangers, and there's no rock music in it. She'll put on what's supposed to be a banging metal track, and it's like a new wave. And I'm just like, if that was a Texas hard rock station, people would be banging down the door trying to fucking burn the place down. Yeah. Because they obviously couldn't afford the rights.
The clearance.
Exactly. So they wanted to have like Lynyrd Skynyrd and like actual rock music and metal in it, and they couldn't. So I thought that was quite funny. That was that's one place where you don't want to sort of cut costs.
Yeah, agreed.
It's also kind of strange that it's so clearly an 80s film. it's set in the 80s. Everything about it is 80s. Whereas the first film, part of the strength of it is you don't know when it was.
It's quite agnostic of what decade you're in.
When was? I mean, aside from the fact that people are wearing bell-bottom trousers and they're in a VW van at the beginning, you don't know. Part of what makes it so menacing is that you don't. It's vague. Like you don't. When is this? When was this even filmed?
But there's no other. I mean, with the original, you know, the majority of the action takes place in and around the Sawyer family home. Whereas here, you've got multiple locations.
Yeah, true.
You're at the radio station. You're at Dennis Hopper's motel. You're at the disused theme park. I thought the disused theme park, the set design was really well done.
Underneath it or on top?
No, underneath.
I thought it looked like I could have.
They really made an effort on that.
They did make it look distinctive, but at the same time, I was just like, this looks like they've kind of reworked a set from the Goonies.
It was Goonies-esque.
Yeah. There was all those just lamps everywhere in the background, and there was those sort of like dusty beams of light coming through, and it was like a cave with all this sort of weird design inside. It did. It felt to me like a something from the Goonies. But one thing that I also think is weird. I mean, you know, Dennis Hopper said that this is the worst film he ever made. Yeah. I think that's clear partially because they make him look really stupid in it. There's one scene where he loses his cool and he screams towards the door, causing a chainsaw. He probably did that thinking that there's going to be dramatic music underneath him. Yeah. What you've got is a man running, going for a very long time. And it looks really stupid.
Yeah, really daft.
Yeah, it looks really stupid. And one thing that I think is really important about this is I don't think it was written as a comedy. All of the gags are visual. There are some lines like the one that you mentioned about that. That's a very funny bit. But there's a lot of the things that are supposed to be overtly humorous, like the way Leatherface does that thing, that shimmying little thing.
I think that's really funny. Every time he did that, I was fucking pissing myself because I love the fact they've chosen an actor who is half the size of Gunnar.
I thought he was, but he is actually 6'3", but he looks short.
He looks tiny.
Yeah, he does. He looks like a little guy. Gunnar Hansen looks imposing and threatening, whereas this guy apparently is 6'3", but it looks like a little guy with a big head.
I thought he was like under 6 foot. He looks so small. So I think a lot of the time, maybe he's kind of under the weight of the chainsaw. He's kind of almost squatting.
Yeah, I mean that's
I laughed a lot. I mean, I watched this movie at 6 a.m. in the morning when I was still like rubbing sleep out of my eyes and itching my balls walking down the stairs. So I just suddenly brewed some coffee and put this on, and I was just like, it was really the right frame of mind to
That's
be.
What I said.
What the fuck am I watching?
Yeah.
Where it really annoyed me and wound me up 20 years ago, and I thought it was a travesty to have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be affiliated with the first film. This one, I was just like, it is a dumb. I mean, it just takes the piss out of the first one. I mean, that's the thing is that you're like, the first film had zero budget. They've obviously given a certain amount of budget to it, but the fact that I'm saying that it's a bit of an odd one because obviously there is some money there, but then they haven't cut on things because in its pre-production, Toby Hooper was only meant to produce it. He was only brought on at last minute to direct the film.
Who was going to direct it before?
I know. Looking on IMDb, they said that Toby Hooper was only ever going to produce this film, and then he got drafted at the last minute with cost cutting to get him to direct it.
Wow, because he was that low ebb. Wow, okay, I didn't realise that. Yeah. But yeah, I did think it was weird that so much of the gags are visual. It is very.
It relies on visual because the dialogue is pretty arbitrary.
But if I think about some scenes that were amusing, they could have been done in a sort of vaguely horrific way. I mean, there's the scene where Leatherface is about, and that's weird that they keep referring to him as Leatherface. It completely.
Bubba.
But I keep hearing his brother calls him Leatherface, and I'm saying that completely ruins any kind. But that's what they're trying to do. It's an act of vandalism. They're not trying to maintain any of the horror element from there. It's just he's Leatherface now because that's what people call him, and he's just a fucking horror cipher. But there were bits that I thought were comedic that could have been done. Like when I tried to imagine the script, I was like, they could have done this as a straight horror film. I wonder if they could have literally done it as a straight horror film. It seemed to me like that way anyway. Even the scene at the beginning where they cut through that car, you could have, and you realise that they'd used a dummy which is the dead brother.
Those guys were fucking awful. Those yuppies were fucking awful.
But imagine,
I couldn't wait for them to get off.
I think that's the point, isn't it?
But absolutely. The effects in that were great. The arterial blood coming out of the half head was just a brilliant piece of gore.
And it lingered on that because
this was what they should have done. This is what they didn't do in Jason was lingering on gore and lingering, which is a real shame because you're just like, it's not even like that's a huge cost, to just to slap on the corn syrup and let's have some gore.
There is also an interesting comparison is that there were loads of attempts at jump scares in Jason Lives and none of them were successful. There is an exquisite jump scare at the beginning of this when they're in the radio station. Whoa! I was just like, when Leatherface first turns up in the radio station.
No, it's great. It's great.
Amazingly well done. That's so.
I jumped.
Probably. I was like, that's perfect. Yeah. Absolutely perfect. Leatherface looks kind of shit.
No, the mask looks terrible.
No,
it looks really rubbery and like a kid's toy.
That's what
as opposed to proper flesh, which is what the original mask looked like.
Yeah, it's kind of
really
similar to. Did he have an odd ear?
It had a really odd. Well, it didn't even remotely look like a human ear. It just looked like a prosthetic.
Oh, I didn't notice that. No, but it's kind of similar to in when they tried to make Freddy look a bit more palatable in the second one. Yeah. So it did look like the mask version that everyone can go out, kids can go out and buy. It doesn't look like the horrific makeup in the first one, which, to be fair, never came back to that series anyway. But yeah, that was a bit disappointing. But then again, like I said, it felt like an act of vandalism. This film, they were just fucking absolutely turning the first film upside down and making an iconic final image as really unsettling and iconic as the end of the first one was, to transplant it here with the woman doing her little dance on the thing. I love that final shot so much, and it's kind of explains the whole film. It's just a guy who wants to kind of. It's almost like he wants to destroy.
But it's so weird that that he's completely bastardised what he did. I mean, he realise that he can't. Like, lightning is not going to strike twice, and he cannot make.
He can't repeat that success. Yeah. It's another interesting thing. I mean, this was banned for many, many years in many, many countries. It was banned until alarmingly recently in Australia, I think, until way past the turn of the century. It was unavailable in England for a very long time. Apparently, when they submitted it to the BBFC said that they would have to cut 25 minutes, and I'm like, there isn't even 25 minutes of mayhem in this. There's not. If I had to cut 25 minutes, you'd have to cut the entire.
Yeah, that seems really excessive, because the only scene that I can recall that's actually quite grimy and quite nasty is in the radio station when LG gets killed and they keep repeatedly hitting his head with a hammer, and he's doing the whole leg twitching and he's going into a fit, and his legs are twitching. That's nasty. I can't think where else you're going to be making all those cuts.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of freak show cartoon. I mean, there's not. It's one of those things where you look at it, it's like, it really was a different time. Can you imagine anybody being upset or disturbed enough by this cartoonish lunacy that anybody would ever sort of stop people from?
No, I mean, the rest of it is so kind of just black comedy, and obviously played for laughs.
Yeah.
Maybe they took offence to the scene where Leatherface takes. LG's face off and puts it over her.
Oh face. Yeah. I mean,
because that looks far nastier on her than Leatherface's mask.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a weird thing. The actress who played Stretch was really good.
She's really good. Well, she has no right to be in this. She should be doing better things.
But that's another thing.
She's a really good actress.
That's what I think is weird, is that when they sort of basically recreate the finale of the first film where she's sort of strapped to this chair and they were going to have a meal and she's freaking out, and you just think she's giving this way too much. Like it's as if she's in a. This is why I don't think her or she, until the very, very end of the film, I don't think she or Hopper realised that they were in something that's as overtly comedic as this. They thought they were making a horror film.
I think that's an interesting.
When she's really losing, I'm just like, she's so good. That's what I mean. It's like, this is like a great scene from a horror film. Then you've got the other guys going. It's so good. They probably thought that they were making something that was along the lines of the first one, which had comedic elements in it, but was completely horror.
Yeah, Hopper's performance is just a very odd, uneven, a bit detached. He's not giving anything.
No, he's not.
His dialogue is terrible.
Yeah, he shouts a couple of random things, and he's related to one of the kids who died in the first one, but it is just like, he's a guy that turns up, buys 2 chainsaws, and then runs scream. I mean, you can understand why he hated it, because he has nothing to do. But then again, at that period, Dennis Hopper was fucking well away with the fairies, so I doubt he remembers making it. But I think what the key to it is, he looks so daft when he runs with those chainsaws. I thought, if I saw that and I was Dennis Hopper, I was like, they made me look like a jackass. I thought there was going to be dramatic music.
And also, it was filmed, the chainsaw duel was filmed so badly. You don't obviously see that's a stuntman in some of those shots.
Yeah, right. No, definitely. Yeah, the whole final bit is like, turns into a weird action movie that's much more like, there's the sword fight and then there's a chase scene. It's more like the Goonies than anything else. This film is inconsequential, it's empty, but way too much about it is too charming to... I don't have the same fondness for it that you have for Jason Lives, but I do think, like, legitimately because at least this is completely different from not only the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's completely different from anything I can compare it to. There are things that I could compare it to, certainly, but it's its own thing. Whereas Jason Lives is some nice humour, but it's still
it's
a Jason film.
Nice, but it's not just. There's far more to it than just nice humour. Because it's the whole thing that it is lampooning the horror genre. It's lampooning slasher films, and it's lampooning the Friday the 13th series. So it's not just humour. There's far more to it than that.
Okay, all right. So I mean.
But I got the thing is, I can. There's to strip this down into kind of enjoyment at the two films. I enjoyed Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 than I enjoyed Jason Lives. I was laughing at Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So as a comedy, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 beats Jason Lives.
Yeah, I mean, as a
comedy.
In what department does Jason Lives win anything?
In the rose-tinted glasses of my childhood.
But do you think it's like a better horror film? Do you think it's a better? I mean, that's difficult because I don't think any of them at any point are even attempting to be a horror film. These are two really tricky films to actually find a clear victor here, because both of them are flawed. Both of them do things pretty well. Both of them do things not so well. So it's really half a dozen of one and two of the other with these two films. I think Jason Lives is a far better made film than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. What?
The score's better. It's edited better. The dialogue is bad in both of them. I mean, it's very much TV movie Jason Lives. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is just kind of... It's just so random.
Yeah. I mean that.
The narrative is stronger in Jason Lives than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
There is.
You've got like a guy coming out of an institute trying to convince the local law firm that he's not a copycat killer. You've got the new Camp Crystal reopening with campers coming back in there. You've got the relationship with the sheriff and the daughter. This stuff. Whereas Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is... You're not given any context. If you had not seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1, you saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I mean, even seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1, you know he's obviously a relative of Franklin or whatever, but they don't reference anything about the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. So all it is a family that are making award-winning chili from butchering people.
Yeah, right. I don't think but the thing is, I don't think you need that. In Friday the 13th, you need more backstory.
And a radio station can basically play a tape of a murder,
and everyone's...
I mean, that is fucking daft.
Yeah, but I mean, that's...
And there is no... The narrative there is not a narrative in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. There is a narrative in Jason Lives. So narrative-wise, music-wise, editing-wise, Jason Lives is better than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. However, I found Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 way funnier.
I think in every department it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I think in every way it wins. There are some nice things that it does. The soundtrack's better in Jason Lives. That's I'll give it that. Yeah. Aside from that, I'll say it's
and it's got a narrative. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 doesn't have a narrative.
I mean, I don't know about that. It's a very simple narrative, and for the entire sort of first half is just to retreat into like this ghost train. It's like
the narrative is
you're giving it way too much credit.
The narrative is paper thin in Texas Massacre 2.
I think it's paper thin in Jason Lives as well.
No, but there is actually a story. There's a
guy's coming to kill. He wants to kill Jason. It's the same story as all the others.
And a country opening.
Yeah, but there's things that happen in Texas Chainsaw Massacre too. But
there is a radio station that they get harassed by a family. They chase the family. And Dennis Hopper has there's no background on him. There's no kind of...
I think they both have shit plots.
Like the plots are fucking...
but I think they're both so...
There is more of it, but if you look at slasher film, there's more plot in Jason Lives than there is in, say, Friday the 13th Part 2 or Part 3.
I mean,
that's usually Jason goes to a camp and starts killing the guys who are running the camp.
The plot in Jason Lives...
There's more plot in Jason Lives than there is in a lot of the other Friday the 13th. There's more to it.
It's like it's a slightly less pungent smell of shit coming from this one than there is in the other. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I thought this was a terrible film. I think I thought they were all terrible when I watched them back in the day, so I have no nostalgia. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 just as a sort of completely unapologetic, again, act of vandalism. I've said it 3 times. I think that's more compelling and something that bears scant relation to many other things. Whereas Jason, like I said, I mean, for all the nice things that it does, I mean, where are you going to go when we're talking about deciding for a winner? Where do we go?
Well, I was mapping it out then, wasn't I? I was trying to go through it with plot, music, editing, you know. I think Jason Lives does a load of things way better than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but I got more enjoyment out of Texas. I would go back and watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but I wouldn't go back and watch Jason Lives. So that says to me that I got more enjoyment out of watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But why I'd go back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is that there are laughs in there that I'd have again. I mean, I was laughing at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is quite a feat in itself. If I had a couple of beers and watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I'm sure I'd laugh even more. Yeah. I'm not laughing at Jason Lives. It was a nice curio to go back to, and I really enjoyed having that time with Jason Lives again. It's not a great film. The kills could have been better, but there was a great number of kills. There's not a huge amount of kills in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
At least there's good performances.
Of who? Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2?
Yeah, I liked Stretch.
Well, Sawyer. I mean,
the dad. I mean, I thought Bill Moseley was good as well.
What about Grandad?
That was the weird thing. The fact that they basically remade the final sequence where they're trying to hit them on the hammer.
They should play that for last one.
Well, I think they did when they did that. The long camera sort of dolly into the Grandad.
Well, there was one scene where he kind of, you know, you could tell that he wanted to kind of defend his son against Dennis Hopper, and he was kind of. I wish they'd done more of that because that was really funny. What I think elevates Jason, well, as I've repeated myself, but it's just one of the strongest entries into the Friday the 13th franchise. Jason Lives, because it tried to do things differently. It was far more playing it for laughs. It wasn't taking itself seriously. There's a lot for horror fans to enjoy, with referencing to the genre itself, and that's what I really enjoyed. And the gothicness of it was really done well as well. So as a kid I could understand why I really dug it, but as an adult I'd be more inclined towards Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 again, because it's just a fucking bizarre roller coaster. It's a shit. It is really, it's a badly put together film, but it's enjoyable. More enjoyable than Jason Lives. I ended Jason Lives and I went, it was nice to visit that again, but I wouldn't sit through Jason Lives again. I'm not going to get anything more from. I've got all the references. I've got all the the kills weren't enough to make me go back and watch it again. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'll go back and watch Bubba shimmy all day long, and the aching banana scene is inspired.
Yeah, it's really funny.
And I love the beginning, the first 10 minutes. It's TV movie kind of guilty pleasure. And gothicness and hammer and all of that stuff I love. First 15 minutes is brilliant. It's hokey.
I think what you're talking about is the first scene, which is probably about 5 minutes. I think what you need to do is find everything in your home that has any relation to Friday the 13th. Go outside and burn them all and just say, I'm done with this. I can't defend it anymore. Because there's some nice things in Jason Lives, but
that's so odd.
Why not?
Go into my house and burn everything. I haven't got anything. I own the Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I don't know. You're so keen to defend it. It's just like, look, there's things I like when I was a kid too. I'll just let them fucking burn. I don't care about them anymore. Jason Lives in the pantheon, in a series of unbelievably shit horror films. It's slightly less shit. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, at least it's interesting. Where are you going to go? I mean, if we're going to decide which is the better film, what do you think?
I think we need to call him an adjudicator.
Oh, are you going for Jason Lives?
Well, I feel like I owe it.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Do you honestly, are you going to go, really thinking about it, if someone listening to this and is just thinking, I'm going to take a punt on one of these slightly goofy horror films where it slightly went into a comedy, etc.
Well, as an adult, you're going to enjoy Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 more than Jason Lives.
Okay.
As an adult. But then I still think there's a lot of enjoyment to be had with a film that is the first. I mean, I keep saying this and I keep repeating myself, but it's a breath of fresh air to have a slasher film that was parodying itself.
Yeah, is it fresh enough to recommend
But
it
it was
over
also very
to.
much of its time as well.
Okay,
you know?
no, yeah, but
it's
don't take- yeah.
1986.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, Scream came along 10 years later and finessed what Jason, basically the kind of the skeleton frame of Jason Lives. You know, Scream went off and you know.
Well, I mean, they made an entire script out of that. There's just a few asides and character names and little bits and pieces here.
But it was not little bits and pieces. It's whole stretches of the film and whole. You know, I mean, it's not just little bits and pieces here. There's this film is peppered with self-known reference. There is. I mean, like, you could write down lines of dialogue. You'd have a whole page of stuff that's referencing.
I reckon
it's parodying the horror. It's parodying the slasher genre.
A solid quarter page, I'll give you.
I reckon you could have 10 quotes.
But with
10 quotes with people going, you know, 10 quotes of characters referencing, you know, the horror genre. As a straight up comedy, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 hits the target more for me.
So which is the better film? You know where I'm going. 100%.
Oh yeah, you're going to Chainsaw Massacre 2 because you got very little enjoyment out of Jason Lives.
Very true.
I definitely got more enjoyment out of it than you. But I would watch Texas Chainsaw. I'm very much on the fence here because I would sit down and be more inclined to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 again than Jason Lives. I feel that I've done my time with Jason Lives, and it was going back as an adult. I picked up far more things that I wouldn't know 20 years ago in terms of how self-referential it was being. But it's a fucking Friday the 13th TV movie. I mean, you know, it's more of a.
So just don't defend it. Just say it's shit. It's shitter than the. It's shitter than the.
It's less shitter than the other 8 films of the series.
No, but what about in relation to Texas Chainsaw 2?
Oh, maybe just got to let it go.
That's what I think.
Do I have to let him go?
I think you have to
let him out into the world.
You have to let Jason go.
Yeah.
He lost Freddy versus Jason.
You know, I feel that I have to whisper this under my breath. But no, I would. If I had to pick between these 2 films.
Just do it.
I'll go for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Okay, there we
You
go.
ground me down.
I think so. Good things happened here today. You finally let him go. Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for listening to this. Please check us out. Leave us a review if you enjoy this. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Check us out on YouTube. We're not on SoundCloud. I don't know why we always say that. Twitter, Facebook, etc. All that stuff. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you very much for listening. See you later.
Chinkly.